What if Pokemon inhabited Middle Earth, the fantasy world of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings? Today we're going to check out regional Pokemon that we all know and love, but with the Middle Earth Lord of the Rings touch to them. Now all of these today are created by Wild Hoenn, who you can find on Instagram, and I've linked their Insta down in the description for you to go and check them out. Now let's dive into some Middle Earth inspired Pokemon. First, we're going to check out regional Turtwig, Grottle, and Torterra. Now, this changes to a grass and fairy type now for this line, and this line is, of course, based on the Shire, and more specifically, Bag End, particularly with Torterra there. Now, every Pokemon today has a Dex entry, so this one says, these Pokemon live in towns and villages inhabited by a small kind of people. These small people tend to those Pokemon with great care. It is a mutually beneficial relationship. I'm also getting large shaman vibes with Grottle in particular. I think those flowers scattered amongst the green is definitely looking a lot like shaman. We can see the very famous round door with a door handle in the middle of it. It's got the chimney, it's got some windows, and the big tree is looking really nice on top of the hill there. Hoenn in this region is now a steel and fairy type Pokemon, but it has a new evolution in Narsalite, and we can obviously see the shards are broken there. Now Hoenn is based on Sting, the sword of Bilbo, which he then gives to Frodo, and Narsalite is of course based on the shards of Narsil, the flame of the west. The Dex entry for this says, these Pokemon are ancient weapons created by an elven kind, glowing when dark types are near. Narsalite is said to have been broken in a war centuries ago, only to be reforged by the one true king of the realm. Until then, it remains in a restful slumber. It'd be really cool to see a different form for Narsalite as well when it is reforged. So it'd be interesting if that could all come together there. Definitely makes sense for Hoenn to fit this inspiration here. I absolutely love the new Fido and Dash Bud though. Looking really cute. Fairy and grass type now for both of them. Now this line obviously based on Lembas breed, and the Dex entry for this says, these Pokemon are ancient companions of an elven kind. Some say that being in their proximity will see you completely rid of your hunger. It is their magical ability to fill your stomach with satiating love and fellowship. We can obviously see the very bready look here for both of these Pokemon, which definitely makes sense, and the leaves of Lorien covering that as well like it did in the films. Also, a quick random aside, but did you know that I actually have a Lord of the Rings tattoo myself on my back? So you would say that I'm a big fan. Do you know what else I'm also a big fan of? Cool t-shirts. And I have a bunch of those in my brand new merch store. Did that even transition well at all? I don't know. But I do have a brand new merch store with lower prices, faster and cheaper shipping than before, and brand new designs. Like this Ramen Cat design, which is based on my own cat, Scout. But there's a whole bunch of other designs you can check out as well, and you can get t-shirts, hoodies, hats, badges, pins, stickers, a whole range of different merch you can get. The link is down in the description. You can support me and my content and get some cool merch at the same time. Okay, on to the next Pokemon. Then next we have Azurill, Marill, and a new evolution in Silmaril. These are now rock and fairy types and looking very, very cool. Now these are based on the Silmarils, which are very famous jewels from the Silmarillion. The Dex entry says, legends tell these Pokemon were crafted from the light of a mythical tree by an ancient elf of great renown. Their might and their beauty is unequaled, and many seek possession of them. And I think the design for this is looking really, really nice. Definitely looking very regal with that goldy elements all throughout all three of the Pokemon here. I also love that the tail, which matches the Silmaril, changes or adds to it for every evolution. So 0 with 1, then 2 on Marill, and then 3 with Silmaril as well, which is a really cool touch. Then next is Pawniard, Bishop, and Morgrathral with a new evolution, all dark and ghost type Pokemon. Now, Pawniard and Bishop are based on Sauron, and Morgrathral is based on Morgoth. And the Dex entry for this line says, these Pokemon are centuries old and carry a centuries old evil. Some say they were at the beginning of time. It is said that these Bishop can only evolve into Morgrathral when they have consumed enough Silmarils. So this line is incredibly evil and incredibly deadly. I love that the weapons on the arms of these Pokemon evolves and gets larger as it evolves itself, which is really cool. We can see that massive mace that both Sauron and Morgoth had as well. And of course their helmet I think is iconic for these as well. I also think it's a really cool touch that the Silmarils are in the helmet of Morgothral as well. We can see those really light blue gemstones, the 3 of them there in the center of the helmet. Because as it alludes to the Dex entry, it says that it needs to consume enough Silmarils to be able to evolve. I absolutely love this next line. We've got Joltik, Galvantula, and then a new third evolution in Ungalviant, bug and dark type Pokemon now. Now, Joltik and Galvantula are based on Shelob, and Ungalviant is actually based on Ungoliant, which is the mother of Shelob. The Dex entry says, these Pokemon are said to be the embodiment of evil and greed. They consume all that glitters and shines and gives off light. Ungalviant is said to be the mother of all spider Pokemon. Now, Ungoliant is incredibly powerful and an incredibly large spider. In fact, that's more of an understatement for how powerful this large spider actually is. But I think this whole line looks incredible. I absolutely love it. Looking very, very deadly and very powerful itself. Next, we have our regional form for Stonjourner, which is now a rock and psychic type Pokemon. I love its little smile at the top. That looks so cute. Now, of course, these are based on the gates of Moria, and the Dex entry says that these Stonjourner can be found along mountain ranges, and is said to be the gateway to vast and cavernous places. Only a single word can open them, and to this day, no one has learned what the single word might be. Now, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you know what the secret word is in the movies, and it is the Elvish word for friend. And something I just have to point out, one of the comments on the Instagram post here says that you better catch it in a friend ball, and I think that's perfect. Sort of within that same scene within the Lord of the Rings movie, next we have Inkay and Dismalurk, the dark and water type Pokemon. Now it's in the same scene because this is based on the Watcher of the Water. The Dex entry for this says, these Pokemon lurk in murky and desolate waters. There, they lay in rest until something disturbs the water's surface, upon which they grab whatever it might be with their ferocious tentacles and devour it whole without thinking twice. Now, to be honest, I think this Pokemon is quite ugly. I mean, I'm sure the artist was trying to not make it look very cute, but I think the eyes and the mouth in particular are definitely kind of, I don't know, gross looking in a way, which I think is a really cool design for this kind of Pokemon here. Definitely not the friendliest of Pokemon, but I think that's a really cool look in a way. Now, I'm a big fan of this evolution line. This is Impidimp, Morgrem, and Balrog, dark and fire type Pokemon. Now, this is, of course, based on the Balrog. The Dex entry says, these Pokemon dwell in the deepest depths of the earth, where they once were banished to after an ancient war. They are mighty creatures whose ferocity and might is unequaled. I think the flames getting larger as the Pokemon evolves is really cool, but Balrog in particular, the massive wings, the giant fiery whip, which is just synonymous with the Balrog, but just the horns, the face, just everything about it is so good. I really like this design. Then next we have Bergmite, which actually has a split evolution. So the first one is Avalugg, both of these being rock and ice type Pokemon. Now Avalugg is based on the Misty Mountains, and the Dex entry here says these Pokemon are immense creatures that spend the majority of their lives in a deep slumber. They are known to exude a thick and cold fog or mist that enshrouds their presence. So if you think of this being inspired by the entire Misty Mountain ranges, this Pokemon has to be absolutely huge. And I love that it's not just one large mountain like Bergmite, like it's got a whole mountain range on top of its back, which is nice. And it's obviously so large that it's got some clouds forming around it as well. The alternative split evolution is Isolanche. Now this is based on Erebor, or the Lonely Mountain from The Hobbit. The Dex entry for this one in particular says, these Pokemon are immense creatures that spend the majority of their lives in a deep slumber. They are known for their solitude and isolation, never seeking companionship from others. They stand tall on their own. This Pokemon also being incredibly large, but I think I prefer the Avalugg. I think having the 3 mountains on top is really nice. Then next we have Dwebble and Crustle, which are now rock and ground type Pokemon. There are 2 different inspirations here. Dwebble is based on the Arkenstone, and Crustle is based on the entrance to Erebor. So the Dex entry for these 2 says, these Dwebble are very rare and immensely precious. They are sought after by many nations. These Crustle are said to be ancient entrances to great fallen kingdoms that have long been forgotten. I think being based on the Arkenstone is really cool and definitely fits Dwebble. And of course the Dex entry saying that it's incredibly precious and rare makes sense as well. The Crustle looks incredibly large with all the different shapes and patterns all over its body, but I do like that it's got other gemstones within the rock along the whole body as well. Then next is Jangmo-o, Hakamo, and Smaug-o-o, which are of course dragon and steel type Pokemon. Now of course this is based on Smaug, and the entry for this says these Pokemon have a relentless greed for gold and other precious metals and gemstones. They will hoard great amounts of these materials in their lairs and defend it with all their might. Now there is so many dragon Pokemon that the artists could have chosen for our inspiration for Smaug, but they chose the Jangmo-o line because the golden elements within the Jangmo-o line definitely fit the Smaug look here, and they actually look like golden coins on the line here, which makes sense because Smaug is just hoarding all the gold that he can. And I think the whole thing turned out really well. The Smaug-o-o looking very large, very powerful, definitely fitting for Smaug. Another one I am a big fan of, this is our Sableye with a new evolution in Smeagol. So this being a normal and dark type Pokemon now. Now, of course, this is based on Smeagol and then more so based on Gollum in its evolution. The entry says, these Pokemon are filled with greed and desire, aimed only at the rings they possess. It is said they were once human and have been transformed by their own insatiable greed for the ring. When they lose their ring, they will seek it until the end of times until they find it again. Really interesting here how the ring is incredibly large on its evolution. I'm not sure if the Pokemon itself has gotten smaller or if the ring has gotten larger or maybe a bit of both. But in particular, I really love the Sableye. I think it definitely fits Smeagol very, very well. And of course, it's holding the One Ring, which leads into our next Pokemon, which is called the One Rin, which sounds like the One Ring. Very, very cool. Now, this actually has two forms. This has a dormant form and an awakened form, so dark and psychic type. Now, of course, this is based on the One Ring, but the dex entry for this says this Pokemon came into being centuries ago when it was crafted by the purest of evils into the shape of a simple ring. It corrupts those in its proximity to their very core, tainting their souls and filling them with greed and hatred. It seeks to return to its maker at all costs. Now, this Pokemon stays within its dormant form until a soul takes possession of it, and then it changes to its awakened form. And I think you can kind of get the gist about what happens with the relationship there. Next, we have Rellor, which is a Dark and Bug type Pokemon, but then its evolution in Rabsca changes to a Dark and Fire type Pokemon. Now, I think this line looks fantastic. Rellor is based on the Palantír, and Rabsca is based on the Eye of Sauron. The dex entry for these says these Rellor roll dark crystal balls across the realm. Their origin and purpose are unknown, but it is speculated that these crystal balls are a means of communication. These Rabsca are said to watch all the realm with their evil fiery eye. It is believed that if one lays its sight upon you, you are cursed and shall forever bear a sinister mark upon your soul until its hellish flames consume you. Which is just a really evil dex entry for a Pokemon. A very cool inspiration next for Duskull, Dusclops, and with the new evolution in Duskcloak. These are now Ghost and Steel type Pokemon. Now, Duskull and Dusclops are based on the Nazgûl, and Duskcloak is based on the Witch King of Angmar. The dex entry for these says these Pokemon are nefarious servants of a great evil. They do its bidding and aid in spreading darkness across the realm. They move and act in the shadows and taint the very souls they touch. Now, I absolutely love Duskcloak. I think it fits the Witch King of Angmar so well. The helmet, the giant flail that it's got, the gauntlets that it's wearing that have spikes all over it as well. It's definitely got that evil to it, but still matches the original line of Duskull, having that sort of one glowing eye behind the skull look there, which is just so cool. I also like that Dusclops has got a sword, so the weapon changes based on the inspirations as well. Now, a Pokemon that works in tandem with that previous line is this one, the Dino, Zweilous, and Felldragon line. These are all Ghost and Dragon type Pokemon now. Of course, these are based on the Fellbeasts that the Nazgûl ride. The dex entry says these Pokemon serve as great steeds for Dusclops and Duskcloak. They are the wings upon which they cover the realm in darkness and shadows. Their fierce shrieking can be heard from miles away. Dino and Zweilous don't have that much change to them compared to their original forms, but Felldragon I think is super cool. The heads of like the Hydreigon with the tips of the wings, they're looking really nice, but obviously the rest of the wings coming down, and just overall this whole design is looking very, very creepy and very, very deadly. A bit of a different vibe now, not so evil. We're going into Carbink and its new evolution in Sylvester. Now, these are Steel and Fairy type Pokemon. They're looking very pretty with a bright gemstone in the center of their bodies there. Now, these are of course based on the Star, and the dex entry says these Pokemon embody love and belonging. If a Star blesses your romantic relationship with another individual, it will create an eternal and everlasting bond between you two. One that can never be broken, not even by the end of days. I love the overall shaping of Sylvester, definitely matching the Star itself, but as I said, that gemstone looking really nice, but just the whole angelic kind of vibe definitely fits the whole Elven jewelry line as well, I think. Then next we have Ponyta and Rapidash, which are now actually pure water type Pokemon. Now, this has a really cool inspiration. That's because this line are inspired by the Bruinen River, which is the river that Arwen uses to dispel the Nazgûl when the waves turn into horses. So the dex entry for this says these Pokemon are rare to behold. In large herds, they will stampede across shallow rivers and bring with them a raging river, the likes of which are rarely seen. I think having the blue into the white coloring on all of the mains here definitely matches the crashing waves that we see in the movies, but still overall looking like a really elegant Pokemon, which is really nice. Next, we have a three-way split evolution for Drampa, and the first evolution is Dramdelf, the Psychic and Dragon type Pokemon. The artist has said that Drampa evolving into an old man definitely works, and I can definitely see that as well. This is of course based on Gandalf, and the dex entry says Dramdelf are considered wise and benevolent spirits. They travel the realm aiding people whenever and wherever possible. They serve the good of the realm. They are also surprisingly skilled at blowing creative shapes of smoke from their mouths and nostrils. So I love the merging of like a dragon but with a wizard as well. It's got like a wizard hat. You can see it's blowing out the smoke that Gandalf does as well. It's also got like the beard and the long white hair as well, and overall just looking really cool. I did say it had a split evolution, so the second out of the three is Dramruman, which is now a Dark and Dragon type Pokemon. This one is obviously based on Saruman the White, and the dex entry says, Dramruman may appear wise and benevolent at first, but they will eventually reveal themselves to be servants of evil. Once good and kind, they have now all turned to irredeemable darkness. So although it's based on Saruman the White, we can see the white elements within this Pokemon. It's also very evil and dark at the same time. So the whites and the blacks there definitely work really well together. Also love the little staff that it's holding as well, which is quite small compared to the rest of the body here. And then the final of the split evolution is Dramdagast, the grass and dragon type Pokemon. Now this is of course based on Radagast the Brown, and the dex entry says Dramdagast are pure and kind souls that inhabit deep and ancient forests. They seek refuge away from humanity and tend to their forests and all Pokemon that live in it. So as well as the looks and designs of all these Pokemon, their dex entries definitely match the wizards that they're inspired by as well. I love that it looks like he's got Radagast's brown little hat, which is really cute. Of course the staff again matching Radagast's. Then next we have Phantump with a new evolution in Enchantry. Now these are grass and psychic type Pokemon. This line are of course based on Ents, with its evolution particularly based on Treebeard, and the dex entry says, these Pokemon are ancient souls that originate from the beginning of times. They are the shepherds of the forest. They guide and protect all souls that live in their woods. Now the March of the Ents is one of my favorite scenes in all of Lord of the Rings, so I'm really glad that we have a Treebeard inspiration here. And I think the Phantump line definitely matched it. We've got that really big leafy green beard coming off, which is really nice, but also like the features like the long arms and the big nose and the eyebrows definitely matching Ents as well. Next is Stakataka, the rock and dark type Pokemon. This is looking very evil and very dark, and that's of course because it is based on Orthanc, the tower in Isengard. Now the dex says, these Pokemon are home to ancient and evil wizarding dragon Pokemon. They are the home of their cruelty, from which they spread despair across the realm. So I'll definitely assume that this Pokemon would have a good relationship with the Saruman-based Pokemon. And I think Stakataka being essentially a building is perfect for this kind of inspiration. It would be cool if it had a different form that was based on Baradua, which had the Robuska Pokemon in it in some way, just to have the two towers itself. But overall, this is looking really cool. Then next we have a new Spiritomb with a new evolution in Tomb Beacon. Now these are fire and ghost type Pokemon. We can definitely see the fire elements there being a giant flame, but these are of course based on the beacons of Gondor. The dex entry says these Pokemon serve as beacons to be lit in times of great despair and urgency. They are the signal between two rivaling kingdoms who once were formidable allies. These Pokemon are the last remaining shred of that alliance. I wonder if it has a form that when they're not lit for both of them are quite small, that flame, and when they are lit is when they get larger. I'm a massive Lord of the Rings fan, of course Pokemon fan as well, so I've loved going through the art by Wild Hoenn here. Here's some of my favorites from today's video. Let me know your favorites down in the comments as well. The merch store is linked in the description if you want to check out any of the brand new merch like this one here, but otherwise I'll see you in the next video. Thanks guys.